Have you ever watched someone rise through chaos not by force, not by fame, but through quiet calculation? In a world driven by noise and ego, the sharpest minds often win without being seen. Petyr Baelish, Littlefinger, is a master of this art. But what happens when subtlety gives way to sentiment? In this video, we'll explore how the smallest choices shape power, and how losing control within can undo everything you've built. If you've ever wondered how influence really works, stay with me. The lessons here reach far beyond the throne. 1. Subtle influence over others. The most effective power is the kind you cannot see. It does not raise its voice. It does not demand recognition. It does not rely on titles, threats, or flattery. Instead, it moves quietly, like a current beneath still water, shaping outcomes without ever appearing to take control. Petyr Baelish, known as Littlefinger, is not merely a manipulator. He is a master of restraint, and his brilliance lies in understanding a truth the Stoics have known for centuries. You cannot force others to follow your path, but you can place signposts so subtle that they will believe they chose the way themselves. Consider the way he speaks to Sansa when she refuses his offer to leave King's Landing. A lesser man would argue. He would insist. He would defend his plan as wise and necessary. But Littlefinger does none of that. He simply lets her decline, offers no resistance, and walks away. This is not weakness. This is clarity. He understands that when you pressure someone, you awaken their pride, and pride, when provoked, becomes immovable. But when you let go, when you allow silence to speak, you leave behind a thought that lingers. That thought, like a drop of dye in water, spreads slowly and soon. What was once rejected becomes the only path that makes sense. Later, it is Sansa who comes back to him, desperate for guidance, not because he forced her, but because she now believes it was her own decision. This is not a trick. It is not deceit. It is mastery of influence guided by the same self-discipline the Stoics demanded of themselves. When you try to impose your will on others, you declare war against their sense of inner sovereignty. Even if they agree, they resent. Even if they comply, they resist inwardly. But when they believe they chose for themselves, they carry the burden and the responsibility, and with that comes deeper commitment. Littlefinger understands this. He never steals agency. He frames it. He does not tell you what to do. He gives you just enough to believe the answer was always your own. Watch how he applies this again with Sansa when discussing her forced betrothal to the Boltons. She protests with fire. She declares she would rather die than marry into that family. But Petyr does not argue. He does not command. He simply says, "I will not force you. Say the word and we turn around." Then he reminds her, calmly, that she has been running all her life. He lets the thought hang there. No demand, just reflection. And it is that quiet contrast between pressure and possibility that alters her course in every conversation. Littlefinger offers only as much as is needed. He gives people enough information to spark movement, and then he vanishes from the path. Consider his interaction with Robin Arryn. The boy is weak, simple, and easily influenced. Yet Petyr does not exploit him with direct orders. Instead, he speaks of danger. He reminds Robin that Sansa is his cousin, that she may not be safe, and then he waits. Robin himself concludes, "We should help her." And Petyr, with serene agreement, replies, "That was my instinct as well." He never commands. He never even suggests. He simply leads the mind to water and lets it believe it found the river on its own. This approach is not manipulation. It is wisdom in motion. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind adapts and turns around any obstacle to serve its purpose. Littlefinger's method is a living example. He does not overpower obstacles. He flows around them. He does not force action. He makes action inevitable. In the case of Ned Stark, Littlefinger once again uses the art of suggestion, not insistence. He tells Ned that he can show him the last person John Arryn spoke to before his death, but only if Ned has the time. He even adds, "It won't take more than an hour, but as you please, this is not a trap, it is a mirror." He lets Ned see what he already wishes to pursue. And that small seed of curiosity becomes the very thing that leads to Ned's downfall. Not because he was forced, but because he owned the choice. There is another layer to this mastery. Petyr conceals his intentions so well that even when people follow his path, they rarely know who set it, as he once said. A man with no motive is a man no one suspects. The more invisible the hand, the harder it is to resist. When others cannot sense your agenda, they cannot brace against it, they cannot strategize against what they do not perceive, and so they move precisely as you desire while believing they are free. This is the highest form of influence, and it is deeply aligned with Stoic thought. True power, according to the Stoics, is never about control over others. It is about clarity within. Petyr succeeds because he is not ruled by impulse. He does not speak to be heard. He speaks to achieve. He does not push. He positions. He does not react. He responds with calm calculation. When others feel their authority threatened, they lash out. When he feels opposition, he smiles and withdraws. If there is a lesson here, it is this: do not waste your energy trying to control others. It is neither wise nor sustainable. Instead, master yourself. Speak clearly but sparingly. Offer suggestions, not commands. Let your silence become the force that makes others reflect. Let your calm presence become the mirror in which they see their own path. And when they choose to walk it, they will carry the weight, the momentum, and the conviction without even knowing you led them there. That is how you outsmart others without resistance, not by overpowering them, but by never showing them a reason to resist, as the Stoics remind us. The wise man acts with purpose but never force. Let that be the foundation of your influence. Let restraint be your sword. Let silence be your strategy. Let clarity be your compass. And watch how the world begins to move around you. 2. Mastery over ego. One of the rarest and most powerful skills in the art of subtle dominance is knowing when not to speak, when not to react, and when not to defend one's pride. Petyr Baelish, the calculating mind known as Littlefinger, embodies this principle with surgical precision, while others in the Game of Thrones universe fall victim to their impulses, to their craving for validation or vengeance. Littlefinger remains untouched by the vanity that ensnares even the strongest. He does not serve his ego, he controls it, and in doing so, he outlasts those who seemed far more powerful than him. In a court filled with noblemen eager to assert their superiority, Littlefinger is constantly insulted and underestimated. He is called lowborn, treated with suspicion, and dismissed with contempt. And yet, he never takes the bait. He never lashes out. He does not need to, because he understands what the Stoics have always known. Responding to every insult is not strength. It is slavery. Slavery to your pride, to your passions, to the illusions others try to project onto you. A wise man, as Epictetus taught, is not concerned with what others say, but with how he responds to what is said. When Littlefinger is mocked by the High Septon, taunted with sarcastic praise for a city flooded with wine and idolatry, he does not retaliate. He smiles. He speaks only what is necessary. He is there, he says, on urgent business for the Queen Mother. Should he send word that he's been delayed? That is the posture of a man who sees the bigger game, one who knows that every unnecessary word can become a chain around your next move. Contrast this with Circe. She, too, is intelligent, ambitious, and ruthless, but unlike Littlefinger. She's a prisoner of her pride. The moment she's captured by the faith militant, she cannot help herself. Surrounded, weakened, humiliated. She still throws threats into the air like daggers. "Look at my face," she says. "It is the last thing you'll see before you die." But those words do not save her. They condemn her. The Stoics would call this the failure to master the self, the inability to prioritize reason over reaction. Littlefinger, by contrast, possesses the calm of a man who does not need to be seen to be effective. When Lisa Arryn claims credit for executing his plan to bring Sansa to the Eyrie, suggesting she allowed him to leave the Vale on urgent business, he says nothing. He lets her believe the story she wants. He does not interrupt, correct, or assert his dominance. He has already won. The result is in his favor. What need is there for applause? His victory is not in being praised. It is in having control without appearing to hold it. And this applies far beyond the world of thrones and castles. In everyday life, people rarely want to be in control. What they truly want is the feeling of being in control. They want to believe that their opinions matter, that their voice leads, that their decisions direct the course of events. Littlefinger knows this. That is why he has no problem letting others stand in the limelight. He leaks information carefully, knowing precisely what each person will do with it. They speak the words, they make the moves, but the strategy was always his. Consider the moment he informs Cersei of the Tyrell's intention to wed Sansa to Sir Loras. She is delighted by the knowledge. She runs to Tywin, reveals the conspiracy, and is rewarded with praise and a feeling of strategic triumph. But none of it was truly hers. Littlefinger gave her the knowledge because he knew how she would use it. He knew that the Lannisters would react with marriages of their own. And while she receives attention and short-term satisfaction, the long-term gains belong to him. He moves silently while others shout about victories they did not create. This is what sets him apart, while others chase recognition, respect, and the fleeting comforts of being right. Petyr is driven by something greater, the end game. He does not need to win the applause of the moment. He is playing for the kingdom, and he is willing to sacrifice his pride every step of the way if it brings him closer to that goal. That is where the lesson lies. In life, when you prioritize being respected, you often compromise the outcomes that truly matter. When you argue with someone for calling you a name, when you enter a conflict just to protect your pride, you are giving your time and attention to what does not serve your greater mission. You are serving your ego instead of your purpose, and in doing so, you step off the path that leads to lasting victory. Stoicism teaches us to be indifferent to praise and criticism alike, to focus only on what is within our control, to master our impulses rather than be mastered by them. Littlefinger lives this principle, even if, for purposes the Stoics would not morally support. His discipline is undeniable, and in that discipline, there is a lesson for us all. You do not need to win every battle. You do not need to correct every lie. You do not need to claim every credit. The world is full of noise, but clarity comes from restraint. The more you let others speak while you remain still, the more they reveal their hand. The more you detach from the need to be seen, the more you begin to see what others miss. And when you stop reacting to every provocation, you begin to move with purpose, not panic. Let others fight for credit. Let others argue for pride. Let others lose themselves in the chaos of needing to be right. You stay silent. You stay composed. You focus only on what brings you closer to the outcome that truly matters. That is the Stoic path, and that is the power that outlasts all others. 3. Detached clarity. The third element in Littlefinger's arsenal is one that separates the strategist from the idealist, the ruler from the dreamer, his absolute lack of sentimentality. In a world where most people cling to memories, to emotion, to past favors, and spoken promises, Petyr Baelish walks a different path. He does not tether himself to ideals of loyalty, sacred oaths, or emotional debt. He is not moved by the need to be good. He is moved only by the necessity of what must be done. And while this may seem cold to some, it reveals a stoic clarity that few ever attain. When others are bound by emotional obligation, he remains free. He is not heartless. He is simply unmoved by illusion. He sees relationships for what they are, alliances of mutual benefit. And when the benefit ends, so does the alliance. This is not cruelty. It is clarity. A pawn that has fulfilled its function is removed from the board. There is no anger. There is no guilt. There is only the understanding that attachments, if not governed by reason, become anchors that slow the ship of progress. Consider the fate of Cerdontos, the fool who helped deliver Sansa to safety. After completing the task he was entrusted with, he expected payment? 10,000, he said. A sum promised, perhaps even believed to be guaranteed. But Littlefinger knew better. He understood that a man like Dontos, carrying knowledge of such a delicate plan, was no longer useful. He was a risk, a loose thread, a potential breach in the wall he was building, so Petyr ends it, quickly, without drama, without remorse, one crossbow bolt, and the thread is cut. The plan is secured. The game continues. Is this behavior to be emulated? That depends. Stoicism does not instruct us to become cold, but it does teach us to view the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. It tells us to remain unmoved by sentiment when sentiment clouds reason. It reminds us that to act from obligation, guilt, or fear of loss is to surrender our faculty of judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone." In this light, truth is not emotional. It is lucid. It is indifferent, just like Littlefinger's methods. This detachment also allows him to act decisively. When others hesitate, he advances. When others weigh morality against necessity, he acts in accordance with his goal. There is a strange power in that, the power to remain still in moments of high emotion, the power to do what others are too sentimental to consider. This is not a suggestion to disregard all human connection, but it is a call to recognize when sentiment becomes a veil over vision. Littlefinger does not operate on promises made in warmth. He operates on precision. His decisions are not influenced by nostalgia, affection, or the hope of being remembered fondly. He does not need to be loved. He does not even need to be understood. He needs only to move forward, to stay one step ahead, to eliminate risk with the same discipline a Stoic would use, to eliminate desire. To someone like Petyr, honor is not sacred, it is negotiable. Emotion is not guidance, it is distraction. Sentiment is not virtue, it is vulnerability. In our own lives, how often do we allow the past to bind our hands? How often do we carry emotional debts long after the relationship has decayed? How many opportunities have we lost because we hesitated, fearing what someone might think, what someone might feel? Even when reason urged us otherwise, there is something deeply liberating about living without sentimentality when it hinders your clarity. To free yourself from unnecessary attachments is not to lose your humanity. It is to claim your discipline. This does not mean we must become ruthless, but it does mean that we must learn to see people and situations through the lens of reason, not through the haze of attachment. It means we must have the courage to act when the moment calls for it, even if that act severs ties we once held dear. The Stoic does not seek to be cold. He seeks to be unshaken, to be unmoved, not because he lacks heart, but because he has mastery over it. Littlefinger's strength is not in deception alone. It is in his refusal to be weakened by sentiment. He is willing to be misunderstood, willing to be hated, willing to be alone, as long as the path ahead remains clear. And this is what makes him dangerous. Yes, But it is also what makes him effective. While others are tangled in webs of emotional loyalty, he moves like wind through the chaos, untouched and unseen. There is a lesson here. Sentiment, unchecked, becomes a chain. You must decide whether you will carry that chain or cut it. You must choose whether you will act out of obligation or out of alignment with your principles. Not every friend must be kept. Not every promise must be fulfilled if the conditions have changed. Do not be cruel, but do not be blind. Let your decisions be clean. Let your direction be guided by clarity, not comfort. And when the moment comes that demands detachment, do not flinch, do not justify, do not explain, simply act. That is the essence of Stoic power, and that is how you move forward while others are frozen in place. Or, when attachment breaks discipline, for a man who has built his entire ascent on restraint, calculation, and indifference to human attachment, there is a paradox at the heart of Littlefinger's strategy. Through 6 seasons and 5 books, he has outmaneuvered nobles, survived betrayals, and quietly pulled the strings behind some of the most significant events in Westeros. But even the most disciplined minds can waver. And for Petyr Baelish, that wavering takes the form of sentimentality towards Sansa Stark. This is not merely a tactical misstep. It is a slow and silent unraveling of the very principles that gave him power in the first place, by allowing himself to form an emotional bond. Not just as a mentor or a protector, but as a man who dreams of ruling beside her. Littlefinger steps into dangerous territory. When he confesses his ambition to sit on the Iron Throne with Sansa by his side, he is no longer shrouded in mystery. He has laid his inner citadel bare, and in doing so, he hands over something no Stoic ever would: control of his desire to someone else, in the Stoic tradition. Attachment that clouds reason is a form of self-sabotage. Marcus Aurelius warns us that if you are disturbed, it is not because things happen, but because you have judged them to matter beyond what they truly are. Littlefinger, for all his brilliance, begins to treat Sansa not merely as a piece in the game, but as something more. He trains her, empowers her, and gives her the tools to play. But in doing so, he creates not just a pawn with agency, but a rival with vision. And, unlike most of his opponents, Sansa knows him intimately. She understands his methods. She has seen behind the curtain. This is where the danger lies. By letting her know his deepest ambitions, he breaks a core Stoic principle: conceal your motives until they are no longer vulnerable. A man who exposes his desire before achieving his end invites interference, and interference always invites collapse. The image he once offered her, of a world where he sits on the throne with her at his side, is not a reward. It is a confession. It is proof that sentiment, once allowed to root, can begin to deform strategy and dull the edge of clarity. Even so, Littlefinger continues his manipulations with calculated subtlety. He does not pressure Sansa overtly. He still speaks in suggestions. He still allows her to feel that every decision is her own. When he tries to plant a seed of division between her and Jon Snow, he does it with words that are technically true but designed to wound. He reminds her that Jon is her half-brother. He appeals to lineage, to legacy, to pride. He whispers, not shouts. But in those whispers lies the final gamble of a man who has begun to believe in something beyond control: hope. The scene at Winterfell captures the shifting power, while Littlefinger plays his quiet games behind the walls. The North rallies behind Jon. The voices rise, the chants echo. The king in the North. The king in the North. And in that moment, Littlefinger is not in control. He is not the center. He is not the hand behind the movement. He's watching something unfold that he cannot interrupt. His influence begins to wane, not because he has grown less intelligent, but because he's grown less detached. He gave Sansa power. He made her sharper, bolder, more independent, but in doing so, he did not account for the Stoic law of consequences. When you teach someone to see the game, you cannot expect them to remain your follower, especially when they begin to see through you. That is the fate of all those who betray their own principles. The moment he allowed sentiment to dictate his behavior, the moment he blurred the line between strategy and affection, he began to lose not to others, but to himself. This is the irony of mastery. The higher you climb, the more crucial it becomes to protect your inner order. The more power you attain, the more discipline you must maintain to keep from collapsing under the weight of your own contradictions. Petyr Baelish had mastered the art of influence, but he let sentiment carve a crack into the foundation of his empire, and from that crack, a future he could not control began to grow. So what can we learn? That sentimentality, when not governed, becomes the silent thief of judgment. That love, if it clouds your reason, will become the hand that lifts your enemy's blade, that the closer someone gets to your ambitions, the more careful you must be in how you reveal your soul, and, above all, that no matter how skilled you are in the games of the world, your greatest danger will always come from within. The Stoic is not without emotion, but he places emotion in service of wisdom, not in place of it. He does not reject love. He does not reject attachment, but he watches them carefully, knowing that if left unexamined, they will turn from warmth into weakness. Let little fingers fall be a reminder. Power without discipline leads to exposure. Influence without detachment leads to collapse. And sentiment, when allowed to overrule clarity, becomes the quiet beginning of the end. In the end, no matter how precise your game or how quiet your influence, there's always one risk that brings everything down, becoming too visible to those you've empowered. For Littlefinger, the very people he helped sharpen, Sansa, Arya, and Jon, may be the ones who ultimately see through the veil and bring about his fall. That is the price of mistaking control for invincibility. But for us, the lesson is different. Mastery is not about dominating others, but about remaining disciplined within. If this video sparked a new way of seeing influence and restraint, take a moment to subscribe and stay on this journey with me. And if you had to choose, who do you think sees him most clearly, Sansa, Arya, or Jon? Comment below with who wins first. And remember, clarity is the real power. Keep sharpening your mind, stay grounded, and I'll see you in the next one, where we uncover even more unseen strengths that shape the world.